Good morning. Thank you for your patience. We were dealing with just a couple little technical glitches. I want to thank those of you who are watching live and for those of you who'll be watching this recorded later for joining us in this listening session about the cuts to our communities by Donald Trump and congressional Republicans. This was originally planned to be an in-person discussion at the Minnesota State Capitol because of the horrendous tragedy on Saturday. We've made the decision to move this session online. And I thank you for your flexibility. We felt that our state troopers who keep our capital safe and were responding in full force last weekend to bring the suspect who assassinated one of our dear leaders, Melissa Hortman, and her husband. We wanted to bring them to justice. So the troopers, as well as other law enforcement, they're regrouping after the largest manhunt in our state history. And I didn't want the security needs for this event to any way be a distraction or pull away from their work. So thank you again for your flexibility. On Saturday, our entire Minnesota delegation, Democrat and Republican, we spoke with one voice to express our outrage, our grief, and condemn horrible acts on public servants. There's no place in our democracy for politically motivated violence, period. I am beyond devastated of the assassination of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. And add to that the attempted murder of Senator John Hoffman and his wife. And then we all know now that two other legislators, their homes, their lives were also targeted. So I want you to know how grateful I know everybody has been that I've spoken to the last couple of days about all the fabulous law enforcement personnel who worked tirelessly to apprehend the suspect. These heinous acts that were committed by this man were clearly an intention to install terror in our communities and to silence us. So we will not be silenced. And our hearts are broken, but I know Minnesota's spirit is strong. So for what we were discussing today, just a few short weeks ago, we were in Congress and we were working on the 2026 budget bill. And the legislators were trying to wrap up their session here with a lot of unknown factors. Today, we're going to talk about some of those unknown factors. And I'm joined by community members who are among the thousands of Minnesotans who have been flooding my office with phone calls, letters, and emails since calling out the illegal actions by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Musk may be out of the White House, but he and Trump are still making cuts and creating chaos for Minnesotans through the unlawful executive orders and DOGE. And now they're doing it through the reconciliation process. More cuts and uncertainty have resulted from the Republicans' failure to pass full year funding bills for this year and forced us into a year-long continuing resolution. 2 weeks ago, at a town hall meeting with several community partners who explained Minnesota's impact of the cuts in Republicans' big, beautiful bill, that's what they call it, the big, beautiful bill, is also known as the reconciliation bill. From state leaders, Children's Hospital CEO, a nurse, disability advocate, food shelf director, we heard the ugly truth about Trump's big, beautiful bill, that it makes the largest cuts to Medicaid in history, in American history. It was a result to 20,000 Minnesotans here in the East Metro losing their health care. That's the equivalent of every resident of Stillwater losing their health care like that. Cuts to food assistance will result in 45,000 Minnesotans going without supplemental nutrition access. It's like everyone, every senior, every child, every working parent in Maplewood, Minnesota, waking up and finding out they're going to go to bed hungry. And why are the Republicans making these cuts? They're giving away massive permanent tax cuts for billionaires like Elon Musk and their other mega donors. As I said, Trump and congressional Republicans are making many other cuts that impact our community, eroding Social Security through office closures, job cuts, making it harder for retirees and those with disabilities to access the benefits that they've earned and they deserve. 80 80,000 cuts to VA doctors, nurses, and other key staff. It's not what our veterans deserve. Eliminations for grants for critical healthcare and other scientific research, cuts to affordable housing for families, and so much more. The Republicans are responding to these illegal actions. These actions are illegal. We're winning in court by either sitting on their hands or, in some cases, cheering on and piling on more cuts and chaos. So I want you to know that Democrats are fighting back, and that's because these attacks are hurting not only everyone across this nation, but the people I represent here in Minnesota. When these actions, the executive orders, the cuts in the grants, the freezing the funds, when they have been challenged in court, Trump and the Republicans are losing. Just Monday, a judge ruled Trump's NIH grant cuts were illegal and ordered them to be restored. But consequently, we know that the danger has been done, and in some cases, it's going to be impossible to fix the damage that's been done. I want you to know I'm using every tool that I have to oppose the Trump administration and the congressional Republicans' efforts to take away food, healthcare, and basic services that Minnesotans rely on. So this listening session and the panelists are one of the tools we can use to help get the word out and to inform the public. Today, we won't be able to tell the whole story about how Trump's cuts are impacting Minnesota, but I'm committed to making sure that these stories are told and also putting them in the congressional record. So quickly, I'm going to just mention our panelists before I turn it over to them. Today, we are joined by a group of outstanding community members who will tell us how these cuts are affecting the lives of Minnesota children, seniors, and families. We have from Head Start, Craig Gratty. And Craig, if I've said your name wrong, please, when you speak, correct us so we all get it right. He's the executive director of Head Start Association, and Kendra, who is the chair of the Community Action Partnership of Ramsey and Washington County, a parent whose child went through the Head Start program. She's going to be sharing her story too. To tell the story about what's happening to AmeriCorps, we have from the Sana Foundation, Tony Sana. From what the grants, and I mentioned there's a course day on it right now for the NIH grants and the NSF grants. So it's the National Institute of Health, NIH, and NSF, National Science Foundation grants. We have from my alma mater, St. Catherine's University, Dr. Mayers and Ms. West, and a student who's joined them, Eleanor Anderson. Our national parks, they also are in the crosshairs here. Impacts from funding freezes from bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Republicans are even going back previous legally obligated money, trying to claw those back. So to talk about what's happening right here on the Mississippi River, from Mississippi Park Connections, we have Ms. Ellen Reed. Affordable housing, Common Bond Communities, President and CEO Deidre Schmidt, and Prevent Hunger and Food Security, Ms. Dillon from Ramsey County's Food Security Coordinator and a SNAP recipient, Jana, will be joining us. So we're going to start out with Head Start. Head Start is a really important first investment made in the education of our children. And President Trump has targeted education in so many ways, particularly through his proposals to eliminate most of the Department of Education and his threats to pull Title I funding, which helps students who are identified early that need that extra intervention in order for them to be successful from states if they don't sign pledges to eliminate diversity and inclusion from our schools. Well, we know the children who make up our schools are very diverse, and we're proud of that. I've written the administration to let them know that these threats are unacceptable and that education is a critical investment for our future. Head Start in Minnesota serves 12,752 children. And in the 4th District, we have 25 Head Start programs. Head Start employs about 3,200 staff too. Head Start is a patchwork of federally funded programs that help disadvantaged kids and their families have access to educational foundation, including early math and reading skills. Social skills are a big part of being successful too, and they also provide mental health and nutrition support services. The president's budget proposes eliminating the Head Start program. Children and families will be heavily impacted if Head Start goes away. So, Greg, please tell us from your perspective, and I know you have a wonderful person there to tell a story too. Tell us more about what these cuts will mean to the children of not only our nation, but right here in the Congressional District number 4.
Well, good morning and thank you, Representative McCollum. Really, what I want to say is, in Minnesota, the president's budget came in and we were cut from Head Start. We ended up being put back in, but still, until a budget is signed, we're very, very concerned about what may happen. Um, we think about the kids in Minnesota, the Head Start kids in Minnesota. Um, Around 65, 70% of the children served in Head Start and Early Head Start are children of color. 45% are English language learners. We are serving a group of children that really, really need our services. And if the services go away, there's nothing like Head Start to replace that. There's nothing in a family-driven, community-based way that can meet these families where they're at on the ground and provide the services. And so what we know, and what we know really is the funding level for Head Start. Well, there's no increase. There hasn't been an increase since 24. And I mean, that's a lot of programs have those challenges, right? But we know that it's creating staff turnover in our programs. We can't sustain our staffing with no increases, with costs going up, all of those things. But we know in classrooms where there's little staff turnover, the kids do a whole lot better. I mean, statistically, they're doing a whole lot better, and it sets them up. And through our research project that we've been doing for 15 years, we know that our kids are doing better in K-12. I think there's some promises that have been made in the Head Start performance standards. I mean, Head Start is 60 years old now, um, that talk about, you know, as an anti-poverty program, really focusing on bringing parents in, and we do that well in Minnesota. 36%, or around 30%, around a third of our staff are former parents, our current
Mhm.
parents. And so, I mean, we're paying good wages, but we need to make sure that promise continues and that families can afford to work in Head Start and still be able to purchase the things they need, live in the homes they want. And so, just to plug that we do need, like everybody else, we need to not only not cut things, but we need to see minor increases, and instead of giving increases to folks that really don't need it. um, what I would say is also just, where we have had really significant cuts in Head Start is we've seen a 60% reduction in our federal Head Start workforce. They're
Mm,
gone. Half the regional offices have closed. Our regional office in Chicago, that was closed with little or no planning. And we're still being told to communicate with staff that are no longer there. And we do get responses from various folks throughout OHS, but they're not timely. We know now that we're going to be shifted to Kansas City, Missouri. But again, we're not getting really any contacts from Kansas, from the folks in Kansas. We know that the Head Start staff that work with programs, their caseloads are going to go up tremendously. I mean, they're going to have, I think that we're going to see probably movement of 5 to 10 programs that they're working with, probably to over 20. And how do you manage that? Picking up all of these additional grantees and to make sense of that. We've seen just a tremendous slowdown in response times, and in funding. And I say that in really in two different places. One is we have our initial funding, right? Where grants get approved and all of that happens. Sometimes we have grantees now that are in their process of applying for next year's funds. They don't get awarded until the day before the new year begins.
wow.
So they're talking about laying off staff, telling families not to come to programs because they don't know if they're going to get money. I mean, seriously, this is kind of some of the things that are going on. I think the other part of this is we have programs. that have to do drawdowns, and how we do drawdowns is we ask for the money and we can only keep like 3 days of money on hand. So and when payroll goes out, you do your payroll, you do your request, and you hope to get the money. And historically, there's been a 1 or 2 day turnaround. Now sometimes the turnaround is over 2 weeks, and we
Wow.
have programs taking out short-term loans that they have to pay interest on to cover wage and fringe for their staff.
So Craig, I know you were going to have someone with you.
Yep.
Is she going to share a few things for a few minutes before we move on to our next panelist? Thank you for that. And I know my staff is taking notes as you're speaking. So thank you for that information, Greg.
Well, I do not see Kendra on. I mean, is
I'm
Kendra?
here.
Yeah, there
Oh,
she
there you are,
is.
Kendra. So you take it
Sorry,
away,
I was having
Kendra.
some issues with my audio, but can you guys hear me?
We can
Yep.
hear you, Kendra, and we were having issues before you got on. So welcome to the Issues Club.
Okay. Okay, good. I feel like I'm right in the place I should be then. So thank you. Thank you
Yes,
for
please take
inviting
a
me.
minute or two.
Yes. So my name is Kendra Gagne. I'm an actual parent and I am the chair of the CAP-RW Policy Council Head Start here in Ramsey County and Washington County. But most importantly, I am a parent that has utilized the Head Start services. And to have a program like that, I'm a single parent. I have a 19-year-old, a 14-year-old, and little Johnny, the 4-year-old, who's currently in Head Start right now. And my eldest child went to Head Start, and my youngest one has. And it's like night and day that the services that Head Start provides these children in need. It gives them that extra boost that they need to be ready for school, to be able to learn. And without a program like that, our children would really be suffering. Uh, definitely, definitely a program that is well needed out here. And it's done so much for me and my family. My eldest went through Head Start. He's now just completed his first year in college, which is awesome. I was unable to get my daughter into Head Start, my middle child, but I can definitely see the difference that Head Start has made from the education standpoint of both all three of my kids. Craig is the diamond in the rough for sure when it comes to the Head Start program here in Minnesota, and I know you as well have been a very big supporter, and we just greatly appreciate it because there's people in this world that need it. Me being one, it's made my life a whole lot easier being able to make sure that my kids have that start that they need in their education. So thank you for your support. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. So what Craig was saying about not knowing the uncertainty of being able to pay staff and who to call and is your program got the green light and all that. Could you just take a minute and say what that means to you as what you've been in that you were in a position where you were struggling with a lot of things going on with young children getting in a Head Start program that didn't have all the hiccups that are being created, the chaos. Let me just call it what it is, the
Yes.
chaos right now. What is a parent right now thinking about what happens when Head Start opens up this fall? Do I enroll? Does it affect their work schedule? Could you take a minute and just talk about the chaos it's putting in people's lives?
Oh, I mean, the chaos just now, as Craig stated, not being able to pay staff, not being able to have those staff, it's going to put a huge hurdle in just the government in general. You know, me as a parent, I rely on that, making sure that my child has education, but even furthermore, childcare, so that I'm able to go to work. Without being able to send my child to Head Start, now I have another concern. I have to figure out where are they going to go to through the day so that I can afford to be able to work and be able to pay my bills, to be able to succeed in this world. And so it's put a lot of uncertainty. Every day you wake up to think, is Head Start going to be open today? Am I going to be able to have a place to bring my child so that I can continue to work? And it's scary. It's definitely a scary feeling as a parent, trying to get out of poverty, and taking a step that helps parents and families get out of poverty with that additional help, wondering if that's going to be there. Um, but furthermore, as a parent and having multiple kids go through Head Start and knowing the difference that it's done, it's scary. It is scary as a parent, and I just hope that we can come together and realize the importance of these services and the importance that they are helping our kids to be able to become our future leaders, per se.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Another person who I've gotten to know and been out to the foundation work that the Sana Foundation does, who's kind of that extra bridge that our kids need, whether it's summer program, after school activities, to keep them safe, to keep them, with the best possible advantage of succeeding in their education, is Tony Sana. So Tony, the Trump administration has canceled more than 1,000 grants, totaling approximately $400 million that support nonprofit organizations that provide social services and communities support across the country. And additionally, the Trump administration announced cuts to Job Corps, AmeriCorps, and Job Corps and AmeriCorps are two really important programs that help train children to be successful and to train our future workforce. So the weakening or the elimination of both of these programs is going to have a devastating impacts not only on our communities, but our economic success here in Minnesota and around the world. On June 5th, so you can give us an update, a federal judge ordered the restoration of the AmeriCorps funding that was cut. And we know that these aren't the ends of the attacks from this administration. And the fate of AmeriCorps remains uncertain because when we win one level in court, the Trump administration doesn't accept that as a defeat. They appeal. Currently, if I have my fax number right, Tony, Minnesota has more than 14,000 Minnesota AmeriCorps volunteers and AmeriCorps senior volunteers. They have about 2,100 people. So can you tell us a little bit about the Sana Foundation? You've been partnered with AmeriCorps since 2011, and I know during COVID, the important role that your community played and how people have come to expect you to be a rock in that community for so many children. So tell us a little more about these cuts.
Well, first of all, thank you, Congresswoman McCollum, for allowing us this opportunity to share the story. We've had a partnership since 2011 with CNCS, AmeriCorps, the AmeriCorps Vista program. We have worked with a couple hundred Corps members that gave a piece of their lives serving the American people. The Vista program was especially impactful as it allowed us to build internal capacity. Over the last 5 years, when COVID hit, our organization really stepped up for the community. We doubled in size from 66 full-time employees to over 100. And that's because we had the support of AmeriCorps Vistas building our back end. As an organization dedicated to supporting ever-changing needs of the community with rapid growth, infrastructure has been a struggle, but the Vistas really helped us move the needle as we went through that growth. It's been evident in every part of our organization. During COVID, we went from zero food to over 2 million pounds annually. We serve over a couple thousand kids in the school mentorship program. And even this year at the gala, we've doubled our gala because of the people there helping build our brand and our infrastructure. On April 25th, we got at 4:45 on a Friday, we got a letter that said, the AmeriCorps was no longer a priority. And we had to plan to work without 10 current members that are really built into the fabric of the organization. We had to pause programming, limit decision-making, restructure the whole organization so we could be sustainable. Without the Vista program, we think we're going to have to decrease by 25 to 30% of our full capacity because what it's allowed us to do. The uncertainty surrounding and the sudden change in plans has caused significant workplace stress, to a bunch of people in our field that are committed to working in public benefit. An example of this is, our AmeriCorps works with our Job Corps, and we hire over 150 kids in the summer to deliver free programming to 8,000 kids. So wow. 8,000 families are going to get to go to week-long camps for free. And we actually put the money into the high school kids and teach them to be leaders in training. Well, when you're set to onboard 150 kids on Monday, and 4 of the people that are in charge of that whole project are no longer eligible, and they've been working on it, and they're the only people working on it, you wonder, who's going to step up? Are you going to get people hired in time? Are they going to be eligible? And what's your ability to serve the families you're going to do in the summer? So that's just one example. And although it's about our organization, the community, it's also about the people that have contracted with us and the government of the United States of America. The Vistas make a pledge, and actually they're required to take an oath before they start. They agree to serve a whole year and are penalized if they leave the program early. They receive roughly $24,000 a year for a 40-hour work week. They've been told that their year-long agreements have been paused, null, or void, or just been uncertain. We have Vista members that have moved across the country to serve And now they're here, they're stuck, they have rent, they're in limbo, and they haven't been given clear direction. They have signed leases, and we're trying to help them out. You know, the greatest asset that I believe we have in this country is the American people. And if we can't continue to support programs that benefit the American people and the public and treat the most generous individuals that serve our country with respect, honor, and compassion, we really need to reevaluate our priorities and be honest about what we say they are. So thank you for allowing us this opportunity and for the partnership over the years.
Well, Tony, just really quick, you're trying to reorganize in a way that feels seamless to these kids, so those kids don't realize that they're not gonna have a great summer. Have the kids, and you're masterful at making everybody feel welcome, everybody feel comfortable, treating everybody with dignity and respect. Have you know, the staff, the kids, how's everybody doing, I guess, is what I want to ask.
Well, I would say the AmeriCorps members themselves, you know, they are in contact with us and they're afraid, right? And they just want, you know, they want to know. They're in the middle of the year and, you know, they just don't know. And, you know, what's incredible about our core members is they just want to finish something they started and they're attached to the work and they want to help. And some of them have been working on this massive program, training young people to start this summer. And, you know, onboarding 150 high school kids, getting all their paperwork, their eligibility, their documents, you know, is like herding cats. And, you know, young people, you know, without a lot of support, sometimes without transportation, with single family homes that need someone to walk them through how to get a job and just being eligible, you know, also adds another resource to the families. Some of these, you know, 15-year-old people will make, you know, $4,000 to $6,000 in the summer, which is really impactful. But if we can't get them across the finish line, they can't even start. So it's just caused really chaos. But the greatest thing that I've seen is, you know, our members just keep coming back and asking, like, when can we get going? Because we want to finish what we started because we know that people need us.
Well, thank you. So we've talked about some social service grants that are really important to our youth, our future workforce. And we're gonna switch gears here a little bit. So the Trump administration, and I'm trying not to use all the initials here so anybody listening knows exactly what we're talking about early on rather than try to figure it out. The Trump administration banned the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, from funding grants that had connection to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I could go on about how wrong that is because when it comes to health, we know men and women, children and adults, people with different racial backgrounds sometimes are more susceptible to certain diseases or certain conditions. And I'll use one of the things I work on a lot, Native Americans and diabetes. So just to say that they're banned from working on that means that we're not taking care of the health of everyone. The Trump administration is still proposing very deep cuts to the Health and Human Services accounts where NIH resides as part of in. And we're concerned about what's happening to medical research. The cuts impacting vital work here, even being done at universities around the country, but it's happening right here in Minnesota. Rescinding these grants will be disastrous for America's progress to identify, treat, and cure some of the biggest illnesses facing our population: cancer, diabetes, and heart disease, which we know affect each one of us personally and sometimes affect us with some of our ethnic groups. So diversity is really important. These cuts will also cause irreparable damage to building the next generation of biomedical researchers. And so here again, I joined an amicus brief to defend the NIH grants against this administration. Once again, I'm proud to announce a federal judge ruled on Monday that the Trump administration's termination of hundreds of these grants by the National Institutes of Health was void and illegal, and ordering them to be reinstated. So joining us from I'll be formal here for a minute. The University of St. Catherine's, or St. Kate's as we affectionately call it, is Dr. Myers West, and a student, as we talked about how this will affect possibly our future generations going into this important research. So take it away, Katie's.
Thank you. My name is Marcy Myers, and I'm a biology professor at St. Kate's. And I have to say that my colleagues and I are grateful for this opportunity to testify on the impact of recent federal grant terminations on St. Kate's, a 120-year-old institution dedicated to educating women to lead and influence in their communities, just as our distinguished alumna, Representative McCollum, does every day. Sweeping and capricious federal funding cuts have resulted in significant and immediate harm to our students, faculty, and staff. As of today, 5 federal grants totaling over $2.4 million have been stripped from St. Kate's as part of the current administration's agenda to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion. At a small institution without a significant endowment or deep pockets, this is a substantial loss, one being felt in real time by students and faculty relying on competitively earned dollars from the NSF and NIH to support their academic and professional advancement. Our success in securing these federal awards is because the programs we've developed supported long-held but quickly eroding government goals to advance scientific discovery and improve human health for the benefit of all people, regardless of their background. I come to today's hearing as one of 3 principal investigators on a $2 million 5-year NIH grant we designed to prepare under-resourced students to be the next generation of researchers in longevity and aging. Through this highly successful program of curricular and mentored research experiences, our students participate in both geroscience, which is improving health span and lifespan by targeting root causes, and gerojustice, which is highlighting how unequally experienced social and physical factors accelerate aging within our communities. The example that Representative McCollum just gave about Native Americans and diabetes is such an example. To our dismay, on May 27th, as our current cohort of 18 research students were literally in transition to their summer projects at Mayo Institute, the University of Minnesota, and here at St. Kate's, we were notified that our grant had been summarily terminated. The immediate impact, we had to let our grant coordinator go, and we are still scrambling to find funding for our students, young women who had arranged their lives to do this important work over the next few months. Longer term, without the contracted grant funding for the next 4 years, we won't be able to recruit a new cohort of eager scholars. Most disturbingly, our current students and those who graduated over the last couple of years are now facing incredible challenges landing postgraduate research opportunities, as so much of the federally funded research infrastructure is being targeted by the current administration. These actions are clearly detrimental to our future health and vitality. Take it away, Dr. West.
Thanks, Marcy. Thanks, Representative McCollum, for having us today. I'm Christine West. I am joining today because I serve as PI on another grant here at St. Kate's. This grant was through the National Science Foundation, or the NSF. They have a Build and Broaden program that provides funding for faculty and students at minority serving institutions. The grant I was working on in particular, it was abruptly terminated on April 25th, same day as some other folks got a letter. It was forced us to lay off a staff member. It forced us to lay off student researchers. It was really disappointing. We had met every milestone and we're on track to finish this research this summer. The research we were engaged in was very aligned with both St. Kate's mission and the NSF's broader impact goals. We were investigating ways to broaden the reach of economics to ensure that students from all backgrounds lead and influence in economics research and in policymaking. The loss of the funding is going to make it harder for us to publish our findings. It's going to make it harder for them to be in open access journals. That'll limit the reach and the ability to turn what we learned into practical interventions and make a difference for our students and our community. It's also really hurt our student scholars, which is why I invited Eleanor to join us here today. She's not going to be able to see the work that she invested in through to fruition, and it feels like such a loss.
These cuts send a chilling message to young scholars and institutions like St. Kate's that serve first-generation students, low-income students, and communities historically excluded from higher education. They disrupt progress, undermine trust in federal institutions and partnerships, and jeopardize the academic future of students. And, like many institutions across the country, we lack the financial reserves to backfill these losses, to complete our research, or sustain our education and training programs. We are actively pursuing every recourse available, including formal appeals of the terminated grants, but we cannot bridge these gaps alone. We urge Congress to investigate the basis for these grant terminations midterm, ensure transparency in the review and appeals process, and reinstate funding that has been unjustly withdrawn. At St. Kate's, we believe change is healthy when it's grounded in thoughtful consideration and shared responsibility. But these actions feel less like reform and more like abandonment. We respectfully ask Congress to stand with students and institutions like ours, who are doing the hard work of expanding access and building a stronger, more inclusive future through education. Thank you for your attention and your commitment to higher ed.
Good job. Thank you so much, because there's so much going on. People don't even realize the broad sweeping effect all these cuts and cancellations and executive orders are going to have on every aspect of our life. And something that's important to all of us in Minnesota is nature and the outdoors. So the Trump administration and DOGE, run by Elon Musk, wanted to take a chainsaw. And I'm using chainsaw because they're talking about our public lands and our green spaces. Trump has proposed selling off and transferring public lands and shutting down public access. The National Park Service is targeted for cuts of over $1 billion in Trump's 2026 budget. That's a 30% budget cut. And I can tell you, serving on that committee, they're already radically underfunded, our Park Service. All of the Forest Service's state, private, and tribal forestry programs, they're proposed for elimination. In the urban community forests, well, $36 million in 2024. Earlier this year, DOGE proposed to shut down the headquarters of our Mississippi National River and Recreation Area. It's that interactive part when you walk into the Science Museum that you see. Not only do you learn about the Mississippi River, the Great Lakes region, but you have access to discover so much more about our wonderful national parks. I had written a letter to Secretary Bergen, and then I had an opportunity to question him in the Appropriations Committee. And we got a commitment that MNRA's leases would be continued, but that's just part of the chaos. DOGE didn't know how that interacted with people. You have to give people credit when they do the right thing. Secretary Bergen had been in that facility at the Science Museum. He knew the difference it made. But as I say that, billions of dollars were illegally frozen at the Environmental Protection Agency. The Department of Energy has had things frozen, and the Interior and the Forest Service, well, they're just in utter chaos in protecting our public lands and with the EPA, our public health. Court orders have lifted the freeze, but Ellen Reed from the Mississippi Park Connection is going to talk about the lost opportunities when these illegal actions were taken, the lost opportunities. As I said in my earlier comments, sometimes you just can't go back and undo the damage. Ellen?
Thank you so much, Congresswoman McCollum, and thank you for your steadfast support of the National Park Service. I serve as Executive Director of Mississippi Park Connection. We are the nonprofit friends group to the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area, your national park, right here in the Twin Cities. Our mission is to strengthen the connection between people and the river through the park, and we do that through habitat restoration, community engagement, and most importantly, open access to outdoor recreation experiences. And this park is interesting. It's a 72-mile stretch of the Mississippi River running through the Twin Cities, but it's also one of the first partnership parks in the nation, which means that they work directly with city, state, fellow agencies, and tribal nations to protect the character of the river. MPC, that's us, supports so much of their work. Some of the top things that we're working on right now is we're trying to restore the tree canopy that's been devastated by emerald ash borer. We are restoring habitat and removing plant species that are decimating the landscape. We also work with AmeriCorps and the Conservation Corps of Minnesota and Iowa to employ and train young people entering the workforce. We ensure that outdoor recreational experience on the river, and most importantly, we connect the disconnected. to the river, and we create space for everyone who wants to experience their national park. However, we are facing some critical challenges right now. As you mentioned, earlier this year, several of our projects that were funded through IRA and bill money were frozen due to executive order. Here's the thing, we have completed nearly $500,000 in work under these agreements, including large-scale tree plantings and habitat restoration. And we were unable to request reimbursement for the work that we had completed. The funding existed and was authorized to be spent. It was simply locked and inaccessible. So months later, when the funds were finally unfrozen, we resumed work. Forgive me. Here's the problem. The damage had been done. Like, the planting windows were closing. Land managers were forced to move on with other projects, or worse, they had abandoned any hope of replenishing the tree canopy. Even as we speak right now, my team is back at the office trying to pull together the remnants of these projects, while the uncertainty of future freezes or outright cancellations still hang over our heads. Every morning I go in and I dread finding a resignation letter on my desk, because the uncertainty of their future is just too much to bear. And here's the thing, projects that are canceled while they're underway leave far more than unemployed people and unpaid vendors. They also leave incomplete deliverables. The American taxpayers have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars for us to restore their tree canopy, but the work's not done. We've spent months organizing the plantings and coordinating with the land managers. We've told the nurseries we'd be purchasing hundreds of trees, but with the projects on hold, we were frozen and the trees were left sitting in nurseries. But it's not just about the trees. It's also about trust and young people losing opportunities. It's about local businesses losing money and fragile ecosystems left untended. My team remains very committed to the mission, but we are straining to protect both people and place and our national park. So we're the Friends Group to the National Park Service, and they're losing staff and being stretched beyond their capacity. You know, as the Friends Group, we see the good work being done every day by park staff to care for the for our river. We have hundreds of members that give generously to help support their national park, because they recognize parks have been historically understaffed and unfunded. Friends groups exist to bridge that gap, because there has always been one. At our park alone, more than 250,000 people visited last year, and every member of the park staff has worked tirelessly to give people meaningful experiences. And when I say every member, I mean that. It is not just about the public-facing rangers. It's the park planners behind the scenes, making sure that trails are built safely and accessible. It's the person processing the payroll and the people reviewing the grants. It is every person who chooses to dedicate their careers to protecting public lands. The National Park Service is already gravely understaffed. Plans to further reduce its workforce while also demanding visitor-facing services remain ineffective are unreasonable and unrealistic. This is one step closer to the complete collapse of the park system. And we know that people will leave jobs when their futures are uncertain and the workload is overwhelming. What will happen when they are pressed to their limits and the infrastructure crumbles? We will see our national park system crumble, and the American experience will be forever diminished. And there is no coming back from that. So what I ask, oh, forgive me, please go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank you, because we got started late. We've got a little bit of a fudge time when we get cut off, and I want to make sure we get to everybody. Ellen, you did a great job. You know where my heart is on the Interior Appropriations Committee. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank your team for all your work.
Absolutely, thank you as well.
On his first day in office, President Trump issued an executive order that froze all grants and loans from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. That's called a clawback. That's illegal. Those were illegally appropriated funds, which people had been counting and planning on, like so many of our panelists have talked about. Many of those programs help low-income Minnesotans keep their homes warm in the winter, cooler in the summer, lower the cost of their energy bill. So Trump's executive order froze $3.8 million grant to common bond communities to fund renovations and energy efficiency upgrades to Vista Village, a very viable, vibrant part of our community on the west side of St. Paul. The grant is still frozen today, and House Republicans are trying to end funding for the grant going into 2026. In other words, make that grant just disappear. But the 74 residents of Vista Village know that unfreezing this grant money is a matter of life and death. So Deidre Schmidt, the president and CEO of Common Bond, which is just a stellar community organization. I always love it when I see the housing projects and Common Bond's names out there. Tell us a little more about how these grants and that are freezing.
Good morning, Representative. Thank you so much for this hearing. I do want to talk about Vista Village, but can I just say, in your opening comments, you were talking about the 2026 budget proposal, and I want to thank you for fighting, and I want to urge you to continue fighting. One of my primary concerns in that is the proposal to reduce and block grant rental assistance. Rental assistance is one of the resources that sustains Vista Village. I know you know the importance for individuals. I hope you also understand the importance for organizations like ours and for the stability of a real estate portfolio that half of which is federally insured. So, those kinds of budget decisions that seem prudent in the short term also have a potentially long-term deleterious effect, even on the federal government. To Vista Village, thanks for your interest. It's a very frustrating situation. The current status of our $3.8 million award under the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program, as of today, continues to appear to be frozen. Vista Village is one of our older housing developments. It was built in 1972, and since that time, it's continued to house kind of successive generations of really important citizens. One of our earliest residents at Vista Village was a gentleman by the name of Ed Flavin. And Ed had stepped down as clergy in the Catholic Church and was devoting his energies full time to ameliorating the root causes of poverty and making sure that all people in St. Paul had an opportunity to live their best lives. He also went on to be one of Common Bond's founders. Recently, I met a current resident at Vista Village, a woman named Lisa. Lisa's been living at Vista Village for the past 6 years. She raised her children there. I loved hearing from Lisa about what she does with her time, both professionally and personally. Lisa's a night shift nurse's assistant. And I'll tell you, if anyone ever needs care in the middle of the night, we should be thankful that Lisa will be there for us. And she will be there for us in a reasonable commute from her home at Vista Village. And Lisa, like Ed and so many people before them, are an example of how if we invest in stable, safe, affordable homes for folks who earn lower wages, that we all stand to benefit. Workers like Lisa are so important. They make such great contributions to our economy. They work in our hospitals, they work in our schools, they work in our grocery stores, they work in our daycare centers, they work at our parks. Without critical workers in these sorts of roles in our communities, our whole regional way of life suffers. So back at home at Vista, this property has been housing seniors and hardworking folks with modest incomes for now over 5 decades. And we have done our best to keep that property in good condition over time. However, the rents that we are allowed to charge that are affordable to folks like Lisa and Ed, who aren't making the highest incomes, they're only sufficient really to pay for the basics, to keep the lights on, to pay property taxes, to pay for insurance. And we now need to replace expensive big ticket items like windows and boilers so that that property can continue to be a place that Lisa can be proud to live in and that neighbors can be proud to live next to. And so finding funds to do that is a critical part of our job as a steward of these housing assets. But if you think it's hard to find money to build new construction affordable housing, I'll tell you, it's even harder to find money to reinvest in the housing that we already have. So after hitting a number of dead ends in our search to find funds to do these important rehabs to Vista Village, we were thrilled when we were the only Minnesota property to receive an award under the Green and Resilient Retrofit program under HUD. It was part of that one-time set of federal resources. The $3.8 million that was allocated to Vista would allow us to leverage many other dollars and to move forward to make sure that that property was ready to go and serve another more than 50 years in service. We still have a giant presentation check that we got to remind us of the hope that HUD will follow through on its commitment and under the instructions of a judge, proceed to process these awards again. But as of here today, there is no sign of movement. This has stalled our progress. I really urge you and other members of Congress to insist that HUD make good on their promises and across the country because thousands of folks like Lisa are depending on it. Thanks for hearing us.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we've got about 10 minutes before we lose things. So I want Ramsey County, I think, all of you work with or are familiar with the great work that food shelves and food banks do, but people need to administer those programs. And the Republicans are trying to cut SNAP. It's been in the newspapers. You know what's going on. I just at another town hall heard from Open Cupboard. They're not going to be able to take up the slack if SNAP goes away. So I've asked Ramsey County, Ms. Dillon, to just give us, if you could just take a minute and set the table, and all puns included because people are going to go hungry, set the table for us about your concerns if we start cutting SNAP. If you just take a minute and a half, thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us. So as the food security coordinator for Ramsey County, I can talk about that, how it would negatively impact Ramsey County and the people we serve. And through deep community and partner engagement, we've heard how people are already struggling with keeping up with the price of food, other inflationary changes, and many competing strains on the family budget. Food insecurity in Ramsey County is higher than the state average. 12% of adults and nearly 20% of children are food insecure. We know that SNAP helps address food insecurity, and while it's only considered supplemental, it's a crucial part of the family's food budget. We know 91,000 people utilize SNAP in Ramsey County in 2023. That's making up more than 16% of our population. So we're going to get hit really hard if changes occur at the federal limit. Children 18 and under are our largest use of SNAP in Ramsey County. It's comprising 37% of the total SNAP beneficiaries, which is 34,000 young people in our county. Also, seniors 55 and older are our second highest participant group after children, reaching 20,000 residents and making up 20% of the county's SNAP recipients. One demographic also of who would be negatively impacted with federal changes is our, just looking at demographics and race, 48% of our total African-American population living in Ramsey County is on SNAP. And so if those changes happen, it's mostly our racial and ethnic diverse communities, our children, and our seniors who are going to be negatively impacted. Ramsey County and Minnesota counties in general determine eligibility for SNAP. So any changes in eligibility requirements with our antiquated systems are going to take a lot more time and increase workloads and cost the counties millions of dollars just out of pocket. And we know that if this current bill passes down administrative costs and reduced reimbursement rates, they're going to have longer wait time because we'll have to process work requirements and other things, which take a lot of lag time. Longer wait times for critical services and benefits, reduced or triage services, and higher property taxes in a county that's already under financial strain with limited tax base and increasing needs in our community. So that's just some examples from a county perspective of how it will affect us negatively. And I want to give time to give it over to our community member, Janae, to talk about her experience with SNAP, if that's okay.
Janeda, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to tell us we need to do better.
Okay. I am a community member and I receive SNAP. I am disabled and I have a 4-year-old, and that actually helps me with being able to provide food for her that's healthy as well as nutritious. It depends on when my disability acts up that I may not be able to work, so that also helps me provide funding so that I can feed her on the days that I am not able to work and provide for myself and my child. So SNAP is a really great benefit to us, and we love that, and we don't think you guys should take, or they should take it away.
Thank you. You did a fabulous job, and I wish you and your daughter some fun times this summer.
Thank
So
you.
in the 5 minutes we have left, I want to give about 2 minutes to the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, who, as many of you know, I've worked with professionally for a long time, but I'm also a product of whether it's Girl Scouts and so many of the other community organizations I've volunteered in over the years. So you've been listening to all of this. You're kind of the big umbrella. What are a few takeaways that I should take with me back when I go to Congress on Monday? And then I'll close up. Thank you all. I'll be brief in my close because I don't want anybody to get cut off. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for giving me the fuel that I need to keep the fire burning under this terrible bill to make it disappear.
Thank you,
Carrie?
Congresswoman McCollum, and thank you everyone who has offered their testimony today. My name is Kari Honested. I serve as the Associate Director at the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. We are the largest nonprofit state association in the U.S. with 2,200 nonprofit members spread across Minnesota and beyond. I want to start by saying government funding of services through nonprofits is some of the best money that government invests because it's able to leverage volunteers, local expertise, philanthropic dollars, community energy, participation, and customization, as you've all heard from the folks who have spoke today. The nonprofit sector and the communities it serves, however, have faced significant challenges the last 6 months due to evolving threats from the federal government. You've heard it today, from freezes, disruptions, and cancellations of congressionally appropriated and legally executed grants to nonprofits, to now a budget proposal that would decimate essential funding for safety net programs like Medicaid and SNAP. What we know is coming up, the U.S. Senate is going to be voting very soon on a version of House H.R. 1 that would decimate Medicaid and SNAP funding, eliminating $715 billion in essential funding. A cut like that would impact every people living in every single congressional district in the country. We think it's important to share that philanthropy and nonprofits cannot possibly make up a difference of a funding cut that size. We think that there may be some congressional members who support these cuts under the assumption that local communities, faith groups, and nonprofits are able to fill gaps and ensure people's basic needs are covered, but that is false. While some people have looked to philanthropy to offset federal funding disruptions and cuts, foundation giving nationally is equivalent to only about 10% of total federal funding to the nonprofit sector. So we want to make extremely clear nonprofits cannot make up the difference of sudden loss of federal grant funding or if funding cuts to programs like SNAP and Medicaid are passed. Nonprofits are able to do incredible work, often stepping up in times of crisis, but we even have limits. A $715 billion funding cut is beyond what any nonprofit system can absorb. Also, public polling has made very clear that the people of the United States broadly support Medicaid, as well as maintaining or even increasing SNAP funding. The proposed federal tax bill goes in the exact opposite direction of what Americans want and will directly cause harm to communities across the nation. So while short-term funding disruptions are devastating for nonprofits and the communities they serve, the implications of longer-term funding cuts can be permanent. For many vulnerable populations, as you've heard today, it can literally be life or death. The impact of reliable federal funding in creating a safe and thriving state cannot be overstated. It's our hope that those behind these illegal and thoughtless cuts are held accountable for their poor decisions, and that we as a society can find greater awareness and appreciation of the important role that nonprofits play in partnership with government.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you all again. If you've submitted written testimony, that is going to go into the congressional record. If there's anything you'd like to add to it, please get it to my staff. For those of you who didn't submit written testimony, we will do a small figure out a way to transcribe it and work with you to make sure it's the way you would like it to be and submit it as well. So I'm going to close it up here. Once again, thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you for your patience when we had a little bit of our glitch and being able to stay on to make up the time. You demonstrated how important it is that community is greater than the sum of its individual parts. We're all interconnected. We're all in this together. And a powerful way to kind of remember that is to show support for what happened this weekend to our legislators who work alongside all of us to make Minnesota a better place to live. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, and there's a lot going on and we're all processing what happened individually, I encourage you to read what Sophie and Colin Hortman, 7 Ideas to Honor Their Mom and Dad. And I close with that today. I'm going to highlight number 7. Stand up for what you believe in, especially if that thing is justice and peace. We will not be silent. We'll continue our work together. Thank you very much. All the best.